Sergeant George McNamara says the week-long discussion gave Army leaders a lot of points to ponder.
After 3 days of non-stop discussions, delegates put their lists in order. Reporting out, as they call it, at the Army Family Action Plan Planning Conference, programs like youth services got positive reviews.
Strongly that this program can help not only enhance the quality of life, but also serve as a role model for our youngsters, who are obviously the next generation of soldiers.
Others took it on the chin.
Our number one issue was the deficiencies in GDP coverage, dependent dental plan. The bottom line is that it's inadequate.
This year's conference focused on 8 areas, with some of the key discussions covering force support, entitlements, and family support. With all the issues on the table, the number one concern hit right in the pocketbook: unequal military pay compared to civilian wages.
We will take this on board, and we will work the issues, and we will get the results back to you. We are not backing away from the quality programs and the quality support that we provide the total Army.
The next stop for the issues is the General Officer Steering Committee. They'll review each item and pass their recommendations to the Chief of Staff. Army Sergeant George McNamara, Washington.
For years, Pan American Airlines flew freedom flights between Berlin and Frankfurt. They were the major American airline flying to and from Tegel Airport through the Berlin Air Corridor over then communist-controlled East Berlin. But now PanAm's legacy is coming to an end. Specialist Ron Lee tells us about their last inter-German flight.
For over 40 years, PanAm has been the major force in German aviation. However, after the fall of the wall and German unification, it was only a matter of time before the huge airline would have to start looking for new places to do business. Germany's flagship carrier Lufthansa was more than willing to resume its operations in Berlin after a hiatus of 45 years. Not long after the last passengers filed off the Pan Am Express, the pilots of the plane were already reminiscing.
Well, the last flight from Berlin to me was a very sentimental journey. We've done a lot of work in Berlin. We've done a lot of service to German people. We've done a lot of service, of course, to many of the European countries. And this was just the last, to sum it up, flight for the one last time, I guess I should say.
Pan Am owned Berlin for the most part as the airlines were concerned. They set the standards, and we try to maintain it the whole time, and I think we've done a good job here in Berlin. It's sad. I'm going to miss Berlin, I'm going to miss the people, and the operation I'm going to miss very much.
Joe Arthur, a pilot with the company since 1988, sums it up best.
I think the most significant thing was that they carried so many people back when the wall was up, when the roads weren't good enough to travel. And this, as several people have told me, German citizens that I've known, that when they thought of the gateway to the world, they thought of Pan Am. And anywhere they wanted to go, they were going to go on Pan Am.
Though the airline's inter-German flights have ended, the company continues to fly overseas routes. However, even this service will end next month, ending what some call the legacy of Pan Am in Berlin. Specialist Ron Lee, AFN Berlin.
In financial news, the dollar was up in trading yesterday against the German mark. So tomorrow at community banking facilities, your dollar still buys 1 mark 60. Let's take a look at the other rates.
Arabia or Kuwait. Here, the mountains are topped with snow in the winter, and the terrain is harsh. The 11th Aviation Brigade deployed to Prinslip, Turkey, around the 1st of October.
Our mission out here is to support the MCC, which is the Military Coordination Center, and Colonel Nab and his mission, which is to support to be a liaison between the Kurds and the Iraq forces.
Sometimes the mission takes them to the Kurdish villages with medicine, and other times their Black Hawk helicopters help bring the Kurdish chieftains together for peace talks. The 11th Aviation Brigade has been at Prinslip near Diyarbakir for just over a month, but it's not yet known how long their mission here will last. Airman Sonya McCross, AFN News.
Bits and pieces of important military information travel back and forth over government phones and radio every day. And as Air Force Sergeant Daniela Machus found out, when pieced together, that information can provide a patient listener with surprisingly accurate knowledge of military operations.
In God we trust, all others we monitor. That's the motto of the 6914th Electronic Security Squadron. By listening to conversations over unsecure government telephone lines and radio frequencies, unit members can pinpoint areas of relaxed communication security, or ComSec. That becomes important when classified operations such as a unit movement are involved.
Slowly, through 2 weeks prior to their deployment, and if we monitor, we can usually figure out everything they're doing. Although it takes many conversations to piece that together. None of it was classified, but together it is.
Business-related conversations are recorded and analyzed. Personal ones aren't. And the goal of the 6914th isn't to catch violators, but to spot problem areas.
We report no names. We don't even report the telephone line, so it couldn't be traced to an office of who gave that information away. The whole intent is to see if there are leaks that we need to do something about.
Operation Desert Storm proved the need for good ComSec.
The biggest effect that had was it proved to a lot of people just how important we were, because people couldn't believe the reports that we generated, the information that we got just over the telephone lines.
The 6914th is the only Air Force unit of its kind in USAFE, and its 85 members are on the road a lot listening to others. So when using a government telephone or radio, remember, chances are a third party is listening. Sergeant Daniela Machus, EBS, near Sembach Air Base, Germany.
Recent Supreme Court confirmation hearings have focused national attention on sexual harassment in the workplace, but most large organizations, including the Department of Defense, have been dealing with the issues for many years. From Washington, Warren Lee has this update.
As chairman of the Defense Equal Opportunity Council and the department's senior personnel officer, Christopher Jane is at the center of the DoD campaign against sexual harassment. Mr. Jane says he thinks the department is advancing toward eradicating sexual harassment on the job.
And to the extent we can measure it, sexual harassment is less prevalent today than it was, say, 5 years ago or 3 years ago. So we're making progress.
Progress that, he says, probably puts the Defense Department ahead of private sector employers.
I think here, as is in the case, I believe, for racial discrimination, we are in a leadership position, and I want to make sure we stay that way.
So Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney, back in July, long before the confirmation hearings, signed out a memo that directed the DoD components to increase sexual harassment awareness training, emphasize prompt investigation and resolution of complaints, make sexual harassment prevention and education a special interest item during Inspector General visits, and continue to issue clear policy statements annually. Mr. Jane says this new emphasis does not signal any radically new or different plan of action.
What we are doing is redoubling our efforts and giving more attention to the current system and the current plans, which I think fundamentally were pretty sound, but we had to make sure they were being widely used, implemented, and understood throughout the department.
And Mr. Jane says the department's policy is really very straightforward. Sexual harassment will not be tolerated. It is, he says, just that simple. Warren Lee, The Pentagon.
The Defense Department says that any military member or civilian employee who makes deliberate or repeated unwelcome verbal comments, gestures, or physical contact of a sexual nature is engaging in sexual harassment. Improving the way the Army does business. That's the goal of total quality management. Specialist Florence Buehlman has that story.
It's a new management concept that gets everyone involved in improving the Army. From the corporal typing memorandums to the major approving the action, TQM suggests changing Army philosophies by getting the people who do the hands-on work involved in making improvements.
Soldiers will benefit in that if we can get the mindset to allow soldiers to do more with their own initiative, they'll benefit from that. If you don't know how to do it, give it to the troops. Tell the troops what you want, they'll get it done for you.
With shrinking military budgets, TQM makes sense. It gives soldiers the opportunity to figure out what changes are needed on their end and lets them make those changes. That frees up management to deal with broader, more time-consuming issues.
Everybody in any organization, no matter what they do, know how to improve their work process. They know what seems to waste time or doesn't make sense to them. And that's why we need to improve, because we can improve.
TQM is hailed as the common sense approach to management. Some define it as doing the right thing the first time and every time. Hopkins believes training bases are the best place to start incorporating TQM. By making total quality management part of the curriculum at military and civilian professional development schools, the Army creates a base for a cooperative new management system. Specialist Florence Buehlman, The Pentagon.
Even with the current drawdown in Europe, a few bases are actually increasing local programs. The Soesterberg Air Base Family Support Center is building up their program schedule. Air Force Sergeant Eric Whitmore says a survey sparked a firestorm of activity.
About 30% of the people at Soesterberg filled out the needs assessment survey this year. That kind of feedback was unexpected and quickly caught the attention of the Family Support Center. They now feel confident enough to increase the number of programs they offer over the next year. Chief of Programs Dave Rogers.
We were very pleased with the response rate that we got from the survey. A lot of people turned the surveys in, and so many did that we have a very high confidence level in the results that we got back from the survey.
People showed interest in 4 main areas: employment, relocation, personal, and financial assistance. So the FSC is increasing their programs by 300% and bringing in more staff to teach the new classes.
The results of our survey indicated that there were 19 programs in particular that people were interested in. So what we've decided to do is take those 19 and run them within the next 6 months. The ones that people come to, we're going to offer again in the following 6 months.
The center offers classes for both military members and civilians. The new programs have already begun, and Mr. Rogers says they've had no problem filling the classes. From Soesterberg Air Base, the Netherlands, Air Force Sergeant Eric Whitmore, AFN News.
It was pretty cloudy here in Frankfurt today, Rob, but I didn't see any rain. Does that mean it might start clearing up?
No, Rob. In fact, there was a little slight break in the action. All that was just a little break between weather system. The whole pattern still fairly unsettled. Let's get things started. Head over to the satellite. You can see how skies out there look this afternoon. Next wave coming in from the northwest out of a seemingly endless series of waves that we've had the past few days. And again, this one coming in from the northwest, already responsible for some light rain action over some of the northern and western parts of Great Britain. In fact, this evening, those showers will continue spreading southeastward, should work their way into Central Europe by tomorrow morning. Moving right along, let's go to the surface map. You can see that weather system that's associated with that wave, a little light rain action in the far northwest. Sunshine, though, did break in and out over parts of Central Europe today, although same time, there was still some spotty rain showers, most of those few and far between, and even some thunderstorm action a little further south in the warmer temperatures. Speaking of temperatures, let's put the numbers on the board. And again, these are readings at 3 p.m., generally the warmest part of the day, at least for most of us. High still in that 40s, if not the lower 50s range. And again, all these systems are coming in from the west these days, so we're seeing very little interaction between that cooler air in the north and the warmer temperatures in the south. Temperatures will likely continue in that 40s, if not lower 50s range the rest of this week and probably through the coming weekend. Now, outside in Germany today, 47 was the high, and that was in several locations out today. Aside from that, skies were quite variable today, and as I said earlier, there was just a little light rain action. Most of that confined to far west Germany, but we'll certainly see more of that by this time tomorrow. Moving right along, this is what I expect for tomorrow. There's that system that we showed you a little further west, but by tomorrow we'll begin working its way into Central Europe. Winds will also pick up over parts of northern and northwest Europe, and as rain slowly filters into the central part of Europe tomorrow. In fact, once that rain moves in, it looks like possibility that rain will continue on and off probably all the way through Friday. Temperature-wise, the readings will drop in the lower 40s over most of the UK tomorrow, with 40s and lower 50s in store for the rest of Central Europe. So then, let's recap this. Take one more look at the forecast. Mostly cloudy, windy, and generally unsettled weather will return to most of Europe tomorrow, as those tonight fall into the upper 30s and lower 40s, with highs in the 40s to low 50s. That's my forecast. I'll see you tomorrow night.
In financial news, the dollar was down in trading today against the German mark. It was fixed at 1 mark 63.75. That's down about a half a penny from yesterday's fix. So tomorrow at community banking facilities, your dollar still buys 1 mark 60. Let's take a look at the other currencies.
Transportation, Millpole, man, I got more sense than the post office. I'm ready to get out of here.
Hey, what about me?
Who said that?
Down here. I'm your POV. Have you got all the paperwork you need to ship me home?
Yeah, I've got that right here.
Let me help you. Here are your orders, and the catalytic converter test form, and your registration.
Hey, that was great. I'll get started on it right away. I don't know what I'd have done without you.
You almost found out.
German police and U.S. military authorities have some questions for 3rd Armored Division historian Dan Peterson, who is now TDY in the States. Questions such as, do you have a license for that 6-foot-long crocodile we found in your bathtub? Or what about that python in your closet? German police answered complaints from neighbors of a foul smell coming from Peterson's Frankfurt civilian apartment. A Frankfurt military community spokeswoman confirms that inside they found the reptile, a lizard, and a snake, plus a huge arsenal including anti-tank weapons, munitions, mines, automatic rifles, and night vision equipment. Frankfurt police say they're still investigating whether Peterson, who is also a private collector, violated any weapons possessions or endangered species laws. Members of the American, British, and Canadian military Army-wide will mean a 10% reduction in workload for medical personnel here in Europe. Congress recently established a minimum number to which the Armed Services medical programs should be reduced. Service members who deployed to Southwest Asia are being deferred from donating blood. This is after 22 personnel were identified as carrying a parasite after returning from the Gulf. According to 7th Medcom Public Affairs, 2 types of parasites are involved. Both are treatable, but can be transmitted through the blood. Since the situation greatly decreases the number of potential blood donors, medical facilities are relying on family members, civilians, and all others who were not deployed to the Gulf to maintain the current blood supply. If you have a family member deployed to Kuwait as part of Task Force Victory, you may be concerned about his or her welfare. Joe Garvey was recently in Kuwait and reports that things really aren't that bad.
It's not Germany, but they're not eating scorpions off the desert floor either. All U.S. Army Europe soldiers in Kuwait are living in fixed facilities with air conditioning. There was a lot of damage from the war, but with old-fashioned teamwork, things are looking up.
We've cleaned out an enormous amount of ordnance. There are about 28,000 pieces of ordnance, from 7.62 rounds to 2,000-pound bombs flying right around in our living area. In addition to that, the American soldier, being the resourceful and initiative guy that he is, has made this a great place to live.
Though all the oil fires are now reportedly out, they were burning during Task Force Victory's tenure. But according to Task Force officials, there's only been one day since their arrival in August the air was considered unsafe. The food is contracted, and conditions are better than many soldiers anticipated.
I don't think the living conditions could be any better at this point. We have air-conditioned billets, we have sectioned-off billets, we have catered food here, so it's been pretty good so far.
All the bombings and stuff we heard, the rumors we heard that most of the buildings around here were destroyed. We thought we'd have to come up here, build our own stuff, stuff like that. We had planned on it back in our last unit to come down here and do a lot of building, helping the engineers out. So more or less this is a lot more than what we did expect.
The engineers have done more than their share, to include building a deck for an above-ground pool. Some of the soldiers have even been adopted by indigenous creatures in the area, some wanted and some not so wanted. So while it's not Deutschland, things are shaping up fast with American ingenuity. In Kuwait with Task Force Victory, I'm Joe Garvey reporting.